Hey everyone, my name is Wedge. It's Monday and rotation just happened, so you know what that means. It's an exciting time to be alive. But moreover, the Manosaurus Tournament Review is back to catch you up on all the exciting decks in Khans of Tarkir Standard. You may have noticed I was a bit more excitable than usual in that intro. Well, it's hard not to be when Khans is already showing its cross-format constructed chops. Not only did every single clan make top 16 in the Star City Games Standard Open, but the Legacy Open winner was also using Khans tech. Some of these decks are completely new, so to save on time, we'll be focusing on the top 8 today. We'll still tell you about the full top 16, but we won't have time to look at everybody's decks. Without further ado, let's start from the top. Kevin Jones took first place with a Jeskai Tempo deck. Now, I won't be going into too much detail here because we're covering this deck in full in tomorrow's deck tech. But let me put it this way. If you opened any Manus Riders over the weekend, you're in luck because they're one of many solid 4-ofs in this deck. This is one of the most versatile strategies we've seen in a while, so we have a lot to say about it. John Goss took second place with Mardu midrange, 2 clans down, 3 to go. Between the strength of Black-White midrange and the 3-color support in Khans, this deck and Obzan midrange were pretty inevitable. Granted, a lot of the removal that made Black-White so strong is gone now, but Hero's Downfall is still here. Lightning Strike picks up small stuff, while Crackling Doom can take care of anything huge. This deck is also riding the hand-hate tactic hard with 4.5 Thoughtseize, that is, 4 of it plus a Despise. Beyond that, this deck just has a ton of big impactful creatures to punch your opponents in the face with. Stormbreath Dragon and Brahma's King of Ereskos are our returning favorites. In terms of new guys, we have Butcher of the Horde, Goblin Rabblemaster, and Sarkin the Dragon Speaker, because let's face it, most of the time he's Stormbreath Dragon number 4 and 5. Sorin Solemn Visitor rounds out the list, making more tokens that will presumably get sacrificed to a Butcher at some point. Green Red Monsters is back, taking third under the control of Mario Martinez, which makes sense. While losing Dominaid was quite a hit, the deck lost very little else in rotation. Goblin Rabblemaster makes a nice new threat though, applying immediate pressure and giving this deck a 3-drop again. Boon Satyr makes a decent Gore Clan Rampager in the latter's absence. The Planeswalker spread is thinner though, with one each of Chandra, Nissa, Sarkin, and Xenagos. And Crater's Claws is the new Mizio Mortars. While it's a little more expensive to do 4 damage, it continues to scale up after that. And besides, if you don't have a ferocious creature and a ton of mana with this deck, you're clearly doing something wrong. Speaking of tons of mana, Ross Miriam took 4th place with Green-Black Devotion. A lot of people thought we'd see some form of Green-Black Constellation post-rotation. With sets, of course, there are Crewfix, Eidolon of Blossoms, and Doomwake Giant, plus Annihilia. I think this is what that turned into. Elvish Mystic, Sylvan Caryatid, Voyaging Satyr, and Nykthos all conspire to make sure you have an irresponsible amount of mana at any given time. Between Pelucranos, Hornet and Genesis Hydra, you'll never be short on things to spend it on. Corsair Crewfix is a shoo-in for all the reasons. Doomwake Giant is a sweet one-sided sweeper, especially given the ability of this deck to drop multiple huge enchantments in one turn. Nalia God of the Hunt gets your creatures around a lot of blockers, and as long as you've got 9 other enchantments, a set of Eidolon of Blossoms seems fine. One Nissa Worldwaker rounds out the list, continuing the theme of all of the mana. In 5th place, we had a somewhat similar deck in Chris Vartek's Green-Red Devotion. While it loses the enchantment sub-theme, it gains even more mana by adding in Rattleclaw Mystic and Xenagos the Reveler. Genesis Hydra, Pelucranos, and Nylea are all as hungry as ever for all of your mana, and Crater's Claws gives you strong removal, or a way to close out a game even if you've drawn nothing but lands and your 14 mana creatures. Jadine Clomparens took 6th place with another Jeskai Tempo deck, this one very similar to our number 1 deck. I'll reiterate that we're teching this deck tomorrow, so look for details then. Claiming 7th place was David Falk with Red-White Control, an unusual combination of words for a standard deck name, but there you have it. This deck was all about removal, with Banishing Light, Chained to the Rocks, Magma Jet, Last Breath, and Fated Conflagration. Beyond those 16 slots of spot removal, there's also Anger of the Gods to sweep against any deck with an early game. Importantly, the deck's only creature, Brahmas, survives Anger, though his tokens will perish in the blaze. Well, only creature other than Sarkhan. But remember, not only does he also have 4 toughness, but he's also indestructible while a creature. In fact, the deck's planeswalkers continue the removal theme quite nicely. Chandra can kill a black-red aggro deck's early game, and if that isn't enough, she can draw into harder removal too. Sarkhan, as often as he's just a Stormbreath Dragon, can also be a repeatable Flame Slash. And Elspeth, Sun's Champion, can go down 3 to sweep against pretty much any deck running green. And while the idea of decks running green is fresh in our minds, Joey Manor closes out the top 8 with Mono Green Devotion. Being as we've already been through 2 mainly green devotion lists, you're probably thinking that there's not much different here. You'd be right. But this deck goes to 4 on Nissa Worldwaker, which is unique among the top 8. We also see 3 Nalia's Disciple here, which is an interesting spanner in the works of early game aggro decks. Beyond that, the plan is the same as elsewhere. Make big mana, then cast huge irresponsible creatures. This deck does earn some extra style points though for being the only one to sideboard Scuttling Doom Engine. Now we don't have time to go over 9 through 16 in the same detail as the top 8. All the same, we want you to know just how diverse these decks are so you can share our excitement about Theros Khans Standard. 9th gave us a mono-red aggro with a Crowan Crusader, Monastery Swiftspear, and a ton of burn and tricks, making for a nice heroic prowess sub-theme. 10th went to another green-red devotion deck much like the 5th place one. In 11th we had something very different, Sultai Delve, hopefully meaning a return of graveyard decks to standard. Temur Monsters took 12th. Think green-red monsters but with more Kiora and also Temur Charm. Red-green monsters took 13th, running a single Chandra Pyromaster, a couple God Xenagos, and solid fistful of burn. 14th went to a creatureless black-white mid-range, not unlike something we could have seen pre-rotation in some weird parallel universe where neither Blood Baron nor Obsidat existed. The last of the 5 clans in the top 16, Obzan mid-range, took 15th with some expected picks like Siege Rhino, or as the commentators took to calling him on stream, Dr. Siegeman Rhinoceros. And last but not least, in 16th we had another green-red devotion deck, clearly an early favorite in this format, and it's not hard to see the appeal. And that's the top 16 for you. After months of seeing one deck or another be the boogeyman of the format, it's a real breath of fresh air to see so many new exciting decks, isn't it? With that said, sadly, there are no standard events next weekend, since both GPs are limited and Star City's hosting one of them, meaning no open. We'll have a surprise for you next Monday, and then back to standard coverage in 2 weeks with the Pro Tour. As always, subscribe below for the latest and most reliable Magic the Gathering information you could ever need. This is the Manosaurus, I'm Wedge, thanks for watching, we'll see you next time.